Zelensky says Putin is terrified. You, man.
Who caused this war in Ukraine? If it was the Nazis, like, taking over Europe, like, these people, would they be making all of these arguments?
The bros, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Joe Rogan, RFK, Vivek, they're all bros. And they're the bro-oligarchy. Is that you saw so many young...
Who's saying these things? I don't believe this. They call them the Avengers. They call them the bro-oligarchy.
And that's LA, and that's New York, and that's a lot of places that got up by incompetent people.
I don't know. I just feel safer knowing, like...
Pull this microphone. Face.
I feel safer knowing that Trump is in office.
I do too.
I feel great about it. Like, I just...
What I don't feel safer is right now they're launching missiles into Russia.
Yeah.
How are you allowed to do that when you're on the way out? Like, the people don't want you to be there anymore. There should be like some sort of like a pause for like significant actions that could potentially start World War III. Maybe that would be a good thing that we would like to avoid from a dying former president. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is nuts.
I mean, look, I don't know shit about politics.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. You, man. People are about to start World War III.
Yeah.
Not the guy who invaded the fucking country? What a stupid thing to say.
Russia fired a missile today.
Yeah, they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time ever. It's the first time one of those has ever been used.
It's insanity.
Insanity, because those intercontinental ballistic missiles can have nukes on them. This one didn't, but if it does, the whole world changes, and it changes because of the military-industrial complex, and it changes because of the money that's going to Ukraine, and it changes because the outgoing president, or whoever the fuck is actually running the country, decided to do something insane. Insane. And we're all sitting there watching it, and people cheering it on. CNN was saying, like, finally. See what their headline was about Zelensky using.
Wait, who does he think fired the ICBM? Does he think Ukraine fired it? I can't tell.
See what their headline was about Zelensky about Biden giving Zelensky the ability to use long-range missiles. U.S.-made long-range. It's not like nobody knows where they came from. It's not like nobody knows we've been funding this. It's a proxy war. The whole thing is fucking insane.
Is that
because those
also technically it wasn't an ICBM, but
continental ballistic missiles can have nukes on them. This wasn't.
Wait.
You people are about to start World War III.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Russia fired a missile today.
Yeah, they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time ever.
Oh no, he's saying Russia fired. Okay, at least that's
the first time one of those has ever been used.
It's insanity.
Insanity, because those intercontinental ballistic missiles can have nukes on them. This one didn't, but if it does, the whole world changes, and it changes because of the military-industrial complex, and it changes because of the money that's going to Ukraine, and it changes because the outgoing president.
Like, who caused this war in Ukraine? Was it the military-industrial complex that made Russia invade? How the fuck how is the blame getting all the way back to them?
Or whoever the fuck actually running the country decided to do something insane. Insane. And we're all sitting there watching it, and people are cheering it on. CNN was saying, like, finally. See what their headline was about Zelensky about Biden giving Zelensky the ability to use long-range missiles. U.S.-made long-range. It's not like nobody knows where they came from. It's not like nobody knows we've been funding this. It's a proxy war. The whole thing is fucking insane. It's insane. Come to the negotiation table. Sit down. Work this out. Stop killing everybody. U.S. allows Ukraine to use long-range missiles. So what did they say? Someone had said that, like, CNN was saying that it was a good thing, which I think is how? How has the left gone so far crazy that they think it's a good thing to launch missiles?
It's just...
That's what's scary about life, is like you don't want to pay attention to that shit.
How do you deal with dipshits that have ridiculous political takes, but when pushed onto the retreat to the I don't know a lot about politics? Well, the reason they never talk to people that super disagree with them. Rogan will never bring on somebody that like has a hardcore, like violent disagreement. Same thing with all the Daily Wire guys. Like, there's a reason why this conservative media circuit exists, and it's so they can avoid those types of questions. Conservatives never have to answer tough questions on shit like this because they avoid people that will ask them tough questions on it.
Just want to live your life. You want to just be carefree and have fun and do the thing that you're passionate about. And meanwhile, the world is burning. And
you can't do anything about it. At that high level, it's like there's nothing.
Well, we can. We voted Trump in, and
yeah,
his idea is to stop all this shit, and hopefully he can do that. Yeah. But, you know, man. Fuck. We got 60 more days until Trump gets in, or whatever it is. How many days is it, Jamie? But who knows? Maybe once he gets in, they'll ramp it up. Who knows? Maybe they'll sabotage his administration. That's what's even more scary. People don't want him in power. And the people that are in power don't want to leave power, and they'll try every way they can to keep it. 60 days from today. All right.
On the news.
60 days.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah. Just hope Putin understands what's going on as well, and Zelensky doesn't do anything stupid. But saying that Putin's terrified. God damn it.
It's like you're trying to like tug the tail of a fucking sleeping
dragon.
Dragons.
Yeah. Also, Zelensky, can I get a drug test?
The Russian propaganda is that Zelensky's on drugs? Oh, gotcha. The sad thing is that no matter what happens in like a year or two, like if it gets worse, it's going to be blamed on Biden somehow. Are you listening? He thought Ukraine fired the missile until the headline came up from Jimmy. Wait, is that true? Did I miss that? Hold on.
Can have nukes on them. This one didn't, but if it does, World War III.
Yeah, it's great.
Maybe that would be a good thing that we would like to avoid from a dying former president. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is nuts.
I mean, look, I don't know shit about politics.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. Fuck you, man. Fuck you people. You fucking people are about to start World War III.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Russia fired a missile today.
Yeah, they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time ever. It's the first time one of those has ever been used.
No, I don't think you're right there.
Insanity.
Fucking insanity.
Okay.
This new Trump administration.
They're calling it the Avengers.
You're a fool if you're going to predict the outcome of that. He has Musk. He has RFK, Ramaswamy. Yeah. These are formidable people. These aren't people who need the political power. Those are the people you surround yourself with if you're out on a quest. Putin will hold himself in check until Trump takes power, and that the war will come to a rapid end. I'm strapped in for the ride. My father, he died recently. Man with very high standards.
My deepest condolences.
I think I remember mostly reading with you.
That was so much fun.
Am I really going to watch an hour of this guy?
Thought so.
I can see how moved you are. You say here he could be fearsome.
Pierce, you always make me cry when you interview me.
Do you believe in God? Do you think there is a heaven?
The problem is there's a whole literature that Richard Dawkins knows nothing about.
Incisive clarity.
Stopping me.
Well, the last time I interviewed the world's most famous psychologist, he unpacked with incisive clarity the reasons why Americans should trust Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. Clearly, America agreed. When it comes to Dr. Jordan Peterson, they often do. His books and tools have had a profound impact on 21st century culture. Now he's back to tackle the biggest subject of all in his new book, We Who Wrestle with God. The best-selling author, psychologist, and co-founder of the Peterson Academy joins me now. Jordan, great to have you back on Uncensored.
Hi, Pierce. Nice to see you.
I'm going to
Thanks
get
for
to
the
your
invitation.
book a little later, and it was utterly gripping, fascinating, challenging, all the things I'd expect from you. But before we move on and then come back to it, the reviews have been almost comical. Like, people love you or they hate you so much they want to rip you to pieces. Do you care? Or, because I get the same, we call it Marmite over here, which is a savoury thing you put on toast, which people either love or hate. Do you care? Or do you just want people to be reacting?
Marmite is one of those, it's another troll thing like British accents. They aren't real, but they do it like whenever Americans are around, they'll put this shit on like, they don't even call them crackers. They call them like preserves. They just have the weird, or something like that. They have the weirdest name for everything. I don't think they actually use any of this shit, but they'll do it when Americans are around, like, oh, these are so good. Ugh.
Acting.
Well, look, I mean, if you have any sense and people are paying attention to what you're doing, you're happy.
Oh, digestives. I'm sorry, that's what they call them, not preserves. I call them digestives. Would you like some digestives, mate? Like you're getting like you're going to the pharmacy and getting some medication for your irritable bowel syndrome. What the fuck?
About the fact that they're paying attention to what you're doing. And then whether the attention is negative or positive, I suppose that's the next thing up on the agenda. And it's been a pattern through my life that people have that kind of reaction to what I'm doing, you know. And luckily in my actual life, day to day, in the real world, virtually everybody I meet is pleased with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so that's wonderful. The reviews, as you said, have been comical. I was reading the Times review today.
Oh my God.
It's like,
He hates
James
you.
Marriott, he just hates me. Oh my God, he just hates me, yeah.
Oh, what
And,
really got it, what I loved about that review was he was clearly, it was eating away at him that the last time one of your books came out, he said something positive that you then used in the marketing for the book, which is obviously what we all do as authors. And he was so determined this time you couldn't do that he wanted to address that right
Yeah,
off the
it's
top. Right off the top.
Yeah, well, I did do it, though. I did do it. I tweeted out something today that I culled from his review to make it look very positive. So I thought that was hilarious. Because it wasn't easy, because there wasn't much in it that was positive. But I thought that would really rub him the wrong way.
Oh, it would
That was
enrage him.
absolutely
Well, we'll come back to the book. It's
Yeah,
fascinating,
yeah.
the book. And I really want to get into that with you a little later. But I want to talk to you, just first of all, I want to play you a clip. This is from when you and I did an interview just after the start of the Russia invasion of Ukraine. Let's take a look at this.
Do you think he will use a nuclear weapon?
If necessary, he'll use a tactical battlefield weapon.
Even
Yes.
if it starts World War III?
It won't. Probably.
Why? Because we wouldn't respond?
What's in it for us?
If you let him do it.
I don't understand how people can have such a one. No, I do understand. Why do I say that? When I say I don't understand, this is more word games. I don't even mean I don't understand. What I mean is like, this is such a obviously stupid position. I wish somebody would take like 2 seconds to evaluate it a little bit more. I need to like we need to like just kill my stream in December. I should. And we just read, not even like 2 hours of meme coverage, but we just read 8 hours a day. I feel like if it was the Nazis like taking over Europe, like these people, would they be making all of these arguments? Like how would these people ever argue against policies of appeasement if we were in World War II times? Like there's just no way, right? Like what would they would never be in favor of us going to Europe ever, right? They would never be in favor of that. I hate that when you click down here now, it automatically moves. I'm just trying to like focus the window without unpausing it. He isn't wrong. Tactical nukes by themselves won't trigger nuclear war, but they, of course, I fully and completely and totally disagree with that. I think that there is a special worldwide feeling about any kind of nuclear weapon, and that as soon as you have used even a smaller nuclear weapon, I think that you've opened up like this pathway to escalation where everything quickly becomes like feasible or possible or imaginable. I think there's a huge stigma around the deployment of any type of nuclear weapon. And if you even use a small one, it's going to change. Like the world will feel very differently about it.
World War III?
It won't. Probably.
Why? Because we wouldn't respond?
What's in it for us?
If you let him do it and get away with it, where does that end? Then you are into a
Well,
analogy.
look, there's a lot. You can get yourself in a situation, no problem, where there's no good outcome.
I mean, here we are, Jordan. You know, we're 2 years later. We're in a stalemate. Putin is still rattling his nuclear weapons as a threatening, back-off, pretty menacing device. He's done that a few times and then not acted on it, but things are clearly very tense there. And there's a change coming in the presidency in America, which could be crucial as well. Where do you think we are with this war? Are we any better off or towards any kind of clarity or ending than we were when you and I spoke back then?
Well, I thought a week ago that the most likely outcome with regard to the outgoing Biden administration is that the military-industrial complex, who has a vested interest in seeing this war prolonged, would do something to provoke Russia into doing something that was unforgivable so that the war would have to continue. And
I'm not fully convinced that's true. I'm curious if we saw like military spending. No, I mean, military spending probably does increase when there's global conflict, but they make so much money otherwise. Like, again, like I pointed to that F-35 program. It's not like we were preparing for a war. Like, military spending is stuff that we're always doing around the clock, and even doing it as like as a dissuasion for other types of military conflict. I'm just not fully convinced that like the military-industrial complex needs us to be at war in order for them to make money. And they're just, comparatively, they're such small companies compared to the U.S. economy, and then especially compared to the world economy, and they have really bad downstream impacts on our markets. Like, for assets under, no, it wouldn't be assets under management. Well, I guess maybe it kind of could be. How much of Lockheed is owned by BlackRock, right? Like, if you were BlackRock and you had a decent share in companies like Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon, or whatever, you would be using that vote to say no war. Like, you are not going to fuck our portfolios up. You're not going to fuck the rest of our companies up just because you want to make a little bit of money. Like, it just, I really wish, I wish that somebody would like lay out like a clear, concrete pathway. Like, show me how the military industrial complex makes us go to war. Show us how they like force us into war and how it's good for, I don't know.
And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly, now I could be wrong, but that seems to me to be exactly what's happened this week. I mean, Biden, in the dying embers of his administration, decided that it was okay for Ukraine to use medium to long-range missiles.
How much is the U.S.'s annual defense spending? Isn't it as big as other small countries' economies? I think it's the lowest it has been for a while in terms of percentage of GDP. You would never compare on an absolute level, right?
Which is a hell of a thing to do as an outgoing president. And now they've also proposed that it will be acceptable for Ukraine to use a certain kind of distributable landmine. And it's like, this is independent of what you think about the war, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, really, is that what you do? That's the steps you take as a dead duck president in the final months of your administration. I think that's a little bit on the provocative side. Now, my sense is that Putin will hold himself in check until Trump takes power, and that the war will come to a relatively rapid end soon thereafter. I don't know. I'm not a foreign policy expert, and the world's a very unpredictable place. But if I had to bet, that's what I would bet on, and I think it's a highly probable outcome. So we'll see. I mean, everything's up in the air, obviously, Pierce. This new administration, this new Trump administration, God only knows what is going to happen with Musk involved, and Vivek Ramaswamy, and J.D. Vance, and Mehmet Oz, and RFK. I mean, you're a fool if you're going to predict the outcome of that.
What do you make of it? I mean, they're calling it the Avengers. What do you make of his picks? I mean, most of them are causing surprise. I'm not massively surprised because I think Trump tried the first time to do things in a more conventional way, and he felt that just didn't work for him.
They're calling them the Avengers. Bro, kill me.
And to take the risk of doing so. You know, people like Musk in particular, but Ramaswamy's in the same boat, essentially. These aren't people, and many of the other people around Trump, these aren't people who need the political power. Right. They already have lives. They already have immense influence. I mean,
oh my God, why would you even say this? It's so stupid. You're getting dunked on by Tyler who was not here. Why? I don't even know what his experience is here. One, this is a CFast card, not a CFast Express card, so it won't work with my current cameras, dipshit. Two, it's only 1 terabyte large, so it's not large enough for the files that I'm recording, dipshit. Three, it says right here that the max write speed is only 450 megabytes per second, which is half of what I need, dipshit. So no, stop.
For Musk to involve himself in the Department of Governmental Efficiency is obviously something that's taking him away from many other things that he's highly concerned about, but he obviously believes that the time demands that kind of response. And I think he's right. And, you know, more power to them. I'm strapped in for the ride as far as I'm concerned. I thought that what happened around Trump in the last 2 months of the election was absolutely remarkable, that these people aggregated themselves around him, and we're in for unprecedented times. And like, the Americans are a remarkable people. And you're always a fool to bet against them. And I think we have a good chance of seeing a revival of people and aggregated themselves around them. And we're in for unprecedented times. And like the Americans are remarkable people, and you're always a fool to bet against them. And I think we have a good chance of seeing a revival of the American spirit that is unprecedented in our times.
Yeah, there was a moment yesterday when Trump went down to see the latest SpaceX rocket launch with Musk, and it just made me think, this is great, actually. Whatever you think of the individual policies and everything else, there you've got the richest, most successful guy in the world, who actually is a big thinker, a big dreamer. And we're going to come to one of the themes of your book, which is about adventure, and how the Bible basically tells us to go and be adventurous, albeit with responsibility and everything else. So there's a real sort of theme that I see with this, where both Trump and Musk are adventurers. And there you had them going down this rocket launch, and it didn't all go exactly how they hoped and everything else. But wow, I love the ambition. I love the fact that Elon Musk is prepared to say, I met him in France earlier this year, and hearing him talk about why we need to colonize.
This is unironically 1984 propaganda. It's just so crazy to me that we literally went from the everyman, we hate billionaires and large corporate people, we're the Republicans, we don't like the establishment, and now it's like the richest man in the world plus Donald Trump, the billionaire, are representatives, and we actually do trust them. It's so funny because a few years ago, 1 year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, you would have heard people on the left argue for technocracies, right? Maybe it should just be really smart people in charge of everything. And the right would say well, no, that's not good. What do you mean you can't have a technocracy? That would be elitist. And I don't want San Francisco elites ruling us. But now they're actually, I think Elon Musk should control literally every single part of the government. Actually, I do think it's good that these guys, it's all just whoever agrees or disagrees with, I don't know. Okay.
Colonize Mars, how we would colonize Mars, how we would get to Mars if we colonize it, was absolutely riveting. And you've got to have an amazing big picture brain. We've got to have an amazing brain, full stop. But you've got to have an amazing big picture brain to think the way that he does. And if he's right next to Trump in this administration, I'm all for it.
That's my situation too. And I feel the same way about RFK. I mean, he's also a preposterous person. He's bigger than life. He's full of remarkable and crazy ideas. And I'm fascinated to see what he might put in place. And I would say the same thing about Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy's establishment of the Strive Fund was brilliant and daring. And we have brilliant and daring people in government. And that doesn't ever happen. And God only knows. I don't even know if it's a good thing under normal circumstances, because I think under normal circumstances, you want competent administrators running your nation. But we're not in normal times, far from it. And so I'm, like I said, strapped in, waiting, exactly as you pointed out, waiting for the adventure of this administration.
So now we want uncompetent people? Okay.
Yeah, and everyone's sitting there thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, good. We should be thinking that, because we should be thinking out of the box, because conventional thinking hasn't got us very far. I'm always mindful of...
Conventional thinking hasn't gotten us very far, except for being the leader of the free world for the better part of the last century? What do you mean by that? What? Excuse me? What? Wait, who?
One of my favourite quotes in sport was Wayne Gretzky, a fellow Canadian, of course, the greatest ice hockey player that's ever lived. And his quote was simple: you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take. Right? I mean, simple as that.
Right.
I mean, that really is, to me, that's the difference in life between a certain type of person and another, is that certain people in life, they just take the shots and they don't mind failure. Elon Musk is going to see all of his rockets plummet into the ocean until he gets it right. But the thrill of the dare, of the adventure, of all of it, again, we'll come to this with your book because it's one of the big themes, but I do think that I feel like it's invigorating right now. It might be slightly...
There's a time and a place for different types of attitudes. There's a time and a place for taking risks, right? There's a time and a place for somebody being in an area in their life where they can do something bold and daring that might, set them back a year or so. But if it works, it's amazing. And then there's a type of person that pushes a massive update into your production environment on a Friday night and destroys your company's stock for a weekend when CrowdStrike fails and half the companies in the U.S. relying on it have enterprise level system total absolute collapses. I mean, there's a time and a place for being daring and trying. In some places it's appropriate, in other places it's wildly inappropriate. What?
Dangerous, and it might take us off on weird places, and it might not all work. But I do feel the scale of ambition is going to be invigorating.
Yep, amen to that. Definitely, that's exactly how I feel. And I also, you pointed out with regards to this book that one of the definitions of God in the biblical library, in the story of Abraham in particular, is that God is in fact the voice of adventure. I mean, whenever people are discussing religious matters, one of the first questions that arises obviously is, well, what exactly is it that you're speaking of? What's your conceptualization of God? What constitutes the divine? And you could say the divine is the pinnacle of ambition or the foundation of reality. Those are both good ways of looking at it. And one of the answers in the biblical text is that God is the call to adventure. And that's definitely the case in the story of Abraham. And the idea there, which is an unbelievably deep idea and also one that works biologically, is that the full expression of the spirit that takes you beyond your zone of comfort and out into the terrible world is the same spirit that makes your life a blessing to you, that makes your name renowned among other people and for good reason, that helps you establish something of lasting value, and that does that in a way that brings benefit to everyone. And that's actually the deal that God offers Abraham in response to his willingness to aid the trajectory of Abraham. And the idea there, which is an unbelievably deep idea and also one that works biologically, is that the full expression of the spirit that takes you beyond your zone of comfort and out into the terrible world is the same spirit that makes your life a blessing to you, that makes your name renowned among other people and for good reason, that helps you establish something of lasting value, and that does that in a way that brings benefit to everyone. And that's actually the deal that God offers Abraham in response to his willingness to...
I wish I could like take people who listen to this and think they have like huge, and like ask them like, what did you extract from this? What is the insight here? Can you tell me? Can you like make this relevant to anything you do in the real world?
Embark on a life of adventure. And I think all of that's true. One of the rules I had with this book, Pierce, was that I tried not to offer any explanations of the biblical text that weren't also fully justifiable from a scientific perspective.
Can you explain your case against M&A? I don't know what is M&A?
And usually from multiple different orientation places on the scientific side. And so why wouldn't the spirit of adventure take us out into the world in the most glorious...
Oh, murders? I just think they're lame. Gotcha. Got him.
...possible manner. Like, what the hell else would it possibly be for?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The other part of this, which is fascinating for me involving you, subliminally, is that you become this kind of heroic figure for millions of young men who felt totally disenfranchised from society. And I remember the first time I interviewed you in my studio, and you got quite emotional talking about them and how you felt responsible to them, how many of them would come up to you, literally in the street come up to you, and tell you how you had sort of saved their lives in many ways. And what we've seen here is, I think, in what they're calling the broligarchy, which I love, which is the bros, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Joe Rogan, RFK, Vivek, they're all bros, and they're the broligarchy. Is that you saw so many young...
Who are these the people in his head? Who's saying these things? I don't believe this. They call them the Avengers. They call them the broligarchy. Who is saying this? I've never heard these before. Who is this?
Men, whether they were white young men, black young men, Latino young men, but millions of them gravitating to vote for Trump because they bought into this general sense that finally there were a group of people here who were going to make you not feel ashamed of being a man, who were going to say that there's something great about being masculine, not something to be, to be shirking away from because apparently it's all toxic. That these are men in the old-fashioned sense. I'm very curious how you feel about that because you've been at such a vanguard of this. How do you feel about the broligarchy and the impact it clearly had? I mean, may well have won Trump the election.
Well, I don't think that the care that I've taken, let's say, with regards to young men is any different in its essence than the care I take with my son. I like my son. I want the best for him. I think he's great. I encourage him all the time. I like to see him move beyond his zone of comfort out into the world. And then I have all these young men who have been listening to what I've been saying, who are doing the same thing. And it's the best possible thing. I mean, I had a show last night in Westbury, New York, and afterwards I usually meet somewhere between 60 and 100 people. And many of them are young men, and they come to the show very dressed up. They often buy suits to come to the show, and they're like standing up and their shoulders are back and they're looking distinguished and they've got ambition and they're thrilled to death because they're doing something worthwhile. And, they shake my hand and they say, thanks for the help. And
yeah, it's
that's
powerful.
great.
It's powerful.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great, man. It's great.
Yes, and I remember the first time I interviewed you, my sons wanted to come and watch that interview. First time. They wanted to be in the room with you because you had that impact on them. And that I found remarkable, too, that you have this real, visceral impact on young men who've been really in the last 10 years floundering for their identity and what is acceptable and not acceptable and what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine.
Yeah, well, I had a good father, Peterson. My father, he died recently. He died about 3 weeks ago, and he was very tough man, very hunter, a trapper, a deadly shot, and man with very high standards, and very encouraging. He was really good at that, really good with little kids.
All right.
And, it's a privilege to play that role for as many people as possible. There isn't anything better than that. And, I think you're right about the fact that spirit has been kindled around Trump. And what's so cool to see with Trump is that he's accepted that. He's proved himself willing to share the stage with all of these other remarkable people. And even in some ways, I wouldn't say to fade into the background because Trump isn't exactly your fade into the background sort of guy. But, the fact that he's invited so willingly these other participants, all of whom are high status people around him, also, to me, put to rest any concerns I had about any pathological narcissism on his part. I mean, obviously, Trump is a very effective self-promoter, and there's something in that that's a real skill. But by the same token, he has RFK, who's a force in his own right. He has Musk, Ramaswamy, Vance. These are formidable people. Tulsi Gabbard as well. That's not the sort of person you surround yourself with if you're a toxic narcissist. That's someone.
Okay.
Those are the people you surround yourself with if you're out on a quest.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see this. It's so literary. It's absurd.
Jordan, I was going to come to your dad because one of my producers discovered that your father had died several weeks ago and found an obituary. I don't know whether you wrote this obituary. One of the family did, and it talked about dad. So it's one of the
Yes,
three.
I wrote it.
It was you. I thought it was because I read it and I found it unbelievably moving. I was going to leave it to the end, but since you've mentioned it now, first of all, my deepest condolences on losing a remarkable man. I mean, even if I didn't know the connection, I just read this about somebody, I would think what a remarkable life he had. He had 3 children, 4 grandchildren. He was a great grandfather to 4 more. He grew up in Norway in a log cabin. But then, as you said, he lived outdoors, shooting, hunting, bird watching, trapping, cross-country skiing, canoeing. And he was an enthusiastic collector of single-shot rifles. I love this detail. That he loved their simplicity, their design and craftsmanship. More importantly, he loved the precision of these rifles. And he liked the fact that a single-shot rifle only allowed for 1 bullet as a hunter, dead center. And that epitomized to you the care and attention that he put into his work. And he was a beautiful gunsmith and craftsman, all of these things. And then became a teacher. And was quite a tough.
Are there people that go hunting with like AR-15s? That'd be pretty funny, but
disciplinarian. You say he could be fearsome. You know, acting up in what his class was not the world's best idea, and as a result, there wasn't much trouble.
No, that
there.
was definitely true.
But he loved kids too, and he was great with them. And as I was reading all this, I was just thinking, wow, okay, I get it now. I get where Jordan has got all this from. There are so many parts of your dad's character in you, clearly. I mean, do you feel that? When you wrote this obituary, did you feel that really quite intensely?
Well, you know, you pointed to that detail with regards to these rifles. Like,
okay, people are saying it's the second most popular rifle to hunt with. God damn.
Father had 300 rifles. This was a real obsession, and he was a very good shot. He was a provincial level shot. And it took me 30 years to figure out why the hell he collected those guns. I don't think he knew. And I told him 5 years ago, I said, Dad, I figured out why you're so obsessed with rifles. I said, it's because you want to hit the target dead center with 1 shot. And that's like, it's a symbolic representation of your aim in life. And he thought about that. And my dad wasn't particularly metaphysically oriented. And that was an explanation he was entirely satisfied with. Right? And you know, the word sin means to miss the mark, right? It means to miss the target. And that's acted out in this. It was acted out in my dad's life in this relationship that he had with guns. And as a hunter, it was the same thing. He hunted with a single shot rifle. You got 1 shot. You got 1 chance to hit the mark. And he was very dedicated towards that kind of precision. That was part of what gave him that rough edge. He had very high standards. He was a very encouraging person. He believed that he imbued me with the belief that I could do anything I set my mind to, but that didn't make him someone who was easy to please. Quite the contrary. It was a very remarkable combination.
Wow.
You said Dad had the force of nature about him. He'll be greatly missed. That force of nature, was it a sense also of that adventure that you talk about so much in the book? Was he an adventurous man?
Well, he was adventurous in his outdoor life, I would say. You know, my father was a tough man, and so he was the fire chief of the local town as well. And the adventure for him was his ability to prevail. You know, and as you pointed out, the log cabin that he grew up in was actually in Saskatchewan. His parents were pioneers, and like the log cabin that he grew up in still stood when I was a kid. We used to go out there. He was quite.
Do either of your parents have a similar personality to you? I feel like my mom might, but it's hard to say because like our applied beliefs are so different. But I don't know.
Sentimentally attached to it, but he was a pioneer type. My father, you know, so. And he was great with little kids, great. And he spent a lot of time with me when I was little, a lot. And it made a huge difference to me.
You know, we found a clip. This is you actually interviewing your father several years ago. Let's take a look at this.
I remember driving home with you to Nathan. You know, one of the things that you write so beautifully, and your stuff is so fun to read, but you write about Trump. Quote, the way that you build a truly vicious nationalist movement is to wed a relatively small core of belligerent idiots to a much larger group of opportunists and spineless fellow travelers whose primary function is to turn a blind eye to things. We may not have that many outright Nazis in America, but we have plenty of cowards and bootlickers, and once those fleshy dominoes start tumbling into the Trump camp, the game is up. When you talk about fleshy dominoes, Chris Christie comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, is RFK an intelligent person? Is this real? Wait, why do these guys have such a good understanding of how this works? It is true that your big worry for people like Trump is a dumb fuck. Elon is probably not like a fascist in the same way that Trump might have like fascistic tendencies, but they sure as fuck see him as an opportunity for them to kind of like sell their shit. So they'll like hitch their wagon to his because they know that they can get further along the trail, basically, right? RFK later concluded Trump was not Hitler because Hitler was interested in policy. True. But he's been doing the anti-vax. He's been doing the anti-vax shit for years, though, hasn't he? Or I shouldn't say years when somebody's as old, like decades, right?
Is to appeal. The easiest thing for a politician to do is to appeal to fear. And you can see that every statement that Donald Trump makes is fear-based. Every statement he makes. We have to be fear of the Muslims. We have to be fear of the black people, and particularly the big black guy, Obama, who's destroying this country, who's making everybody miserable, and only one person has the genius and the capacity to solve these things. I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to do it. Just trust in me, vote for me, and everything will be great again. And of course, that is a really, that whole thing is
seductive.
Like a carnival barker.
Yeah.
But carnival barkers make a lot of money. And, as the most famous carnival barker of all time said, P.T. Barnum, you can fool, let me paraphrase, a lot of the people a lot of the time.
But you can't fool all the people all the time.
And I think that's and there's a strict, easy formula for doing that, and that is to blend fear with these hyperbolic promises about what you're going to deliver.
Well, it's a terrifying